You've probably heard it 1,000 times. Work hard, stay hungry, keep grinding. It's the mantra of our age, printed on coffee mugs, shouted by influencers, and silently echoed in every sleepless night spent chasing the next milestone. Somewhere along the way, productivity stopped being just a virtue and became a religion. We don't just work anymore, we worship work. We measure our worth by how much we can endure, how much we can produce, how little we can rest. But have you ever wondered what all this effort is really for? Because underneath the polished language of ambition lies something darker, a quiet desperation to prove that we're enough, that if we just push a little harder, achieve a little more, finally make it, maybe then we'll deserve to rest. Maybe then we'll feel complete. The irony, of course, is that no one ever really tells you when enough begins. There's always another promotion to chase, another metric to hit, another version of yourself to upgrade. The goalpost keeps moving, not because success is infinite, but because insecurity is. And the system knows that. It thrives on it. Every productivity app, every rise and grind quote, every self-help book about optimizing your morning routine, they all feed the same quiet fear that without constant motion, you'll lose your value. Psychologists call this performance-based self-worth, the belief that your value as a human being depends entirely on how well you perform. It's a subtle but devastating trap. You start to confuse doing with being. You stop asking who you are and focus only on what you can do. And before long, your identity dissolves into a to-do list. Philosophers have long warned us about this illusion. Kierkegaard called it the despair of never being yourself, the tragedy of living as if you are an endless project to be perfected, rather than a person to be understood. When your life becomes a constant effort to achieve, rather than to experience, you end up living in the future tense, always anticipating, never arriving. You might tell yourself that this is just temporary, that you're paying your dues, building your future, earning your rest. But what if the hustle never ends? What if the system was designed to keep you running, not to set you free? Because exhaustion has become the new badge of honor. Burnout is worn like a medal, and somewhere along the way, we forgot that being tired all the time isn't a sign of importance. It's a sign of imbalance. The cult of productivity seduces us because it promises control. It tells us that if we work hard enough, plan meticulously enough, and hustle relentlessly enough, we can outrun uncertainty. But life was never meant to be mastered that way. The more we chase control, the more anxious and alienated we become. We mistake busyness for meaning and end up filling our days with motion that leads nowhere. Seneca warned that the tragedy of life is not its brevity, but how much of it we waste, not in rest or leisure, but in chasing the wrong things. And in that sense, hustle culture isn't just a modern problem. It's an ancient human mistake, the belief that our worth must always be earned. Maybe it's time to pause, not to give up on ambition, but to redefine it. Because real success isn't about doing more. It's about knowing what's worth doing at all. The tragedy of hustle culture isn't just physical exhaustion, it's emotional erosion. It eats away at the parts of you that make life feel worth living. You start out driven by passion, but somewhere along the line, passion becomes pressure. What once inspired you now quietly suffocates you. You wake up anxious before the day even begins, not because there's a tiger chasing you, but because your mind has turned every email, every task, every minor delay into a threat. You feel like you're always behind, even when you're ahead. That constant tension, the inability to rest without guilt, is the invisible tax of a culture that glorifies doing over being. We often call it burnout, but burnout is not just tiredness. It's the collapse of meaning. It's when your body keeps moving, but your spirit has quietly checked out. You start to feel numb, not because you don't care, but because caring has become too heavy. You lose interest in the things that once mattered, not from laziness, but from depletion. In a world obsessed with optimization, even our emotions become tasks. Happiness is a goal to achieve, not an experience to feel. Gratitude journals, mindfulness apps, productivity hacks, tools that once promised balance have become yet another way to measure our worth. We no longer rest to restore ourselves. We rest to recharge so we can work again. And this endless striving has a deeper emotional consequence: alienation. When everything becomes a performance, your job, your relationships, even your self-care, you start to lose touch with the raw, unpolished parts of yourself. You start speaking in metrics instead of feelings. You say, "I'm doing well," instead of, "I feel lost." You post about success milestones, but inside, you're quietly wondering when life became so mechanical. There's a loneliness that thrives beneath ambition, the kind that comes not from being alone, but from being unseen, because when your value is tied to performance, no one truly sees you anymore. They see your output, your potential, your productivity, and after a while, you start to see yourself the same way. You become both the worker and the product, both the creator and the commodity. Modern life rewards this fragmentation. It tells us to build a personal brand, network strategically, always stay relevant. But relevance is a moving target. You can never fully rest in your own skin when your sense of worth depends on external validation. You can't slow down because the moment you do, you risk becoming invisible. And so, we keep performing. We smile when we're drained. We say, "I'm fine" when we're breaking. We congratulate each other for endurance, not peace. The culture has taught us to fear stillness because stillness forces us to feel, to notice the emptiness behind all the motion, to confront the possibility that we've mistaken achievement for purpose. The philosopher Erich Fromm once said that modern man has become an automaton who lives to consume, to produce, and to perform. We no longer ask, "Who am I?" but rather, "What can I show for myself?" The self becomes a project to advertise, not a mystery to understand. And when identity becomes a performance, authenticity dies quietly in the background. That's the emotional cost no one talks about. The quiet grief of living efficiently, but not fully. We pride ourselves on being adaptable, resilient, self-disciplined. But beneath the surface, so many of us are starving for meaning. We've confused activity with aliveness. We're surrounded by opportunities, yet haunted by a sense of emptiness that no achievement seems to fill. It's not that ambition is evil. It's that ambition, when detached from depth, becomes hollow. When you chase success without self-awareness, you end up climbing ladders that lead nowhere. You achieve everything that was supposed to make you happy, only to feel a strange ache, a realization that you were running toward approval, not purpose. And that's the cruel paradox. The more we try to prove our worth through work, the further we drift from the parts of ourselves that make us worthy to begin with. We don't need more motivation. We need meaning. We don't need to push harder. We need to pause long enough to ask why we're pushing at all. The path forward isn't about rejecting ambition, but remembering its original purpose: to create, to grow, to contribute something real, to live from intention, not compulsion. Because no promotion, no metric, no milestone will ever replace the quiet peace of being at home with yourself. If the first tragedy of hustle culture is exhaustion, and the second is alienation, then the final one is forgetting who you are without the noise. Because when you spend long enough proving your worth, you begin to fear who you might be without something to prove. The way out isn't to abandon ambition, it's to reclaim authorship over it, to remember that your goals are supposed to serve your life, not consume it. Stillness isn't the opposite of progress. It's the space that gives progress meaning. But in a world addicted to motion, stillness feels radical. It's an act of quiet rebellion to say, "I am enough, even when I'm not achieving." The philosopher Blaise Pascal once wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." That inability is magnified today. We reach for our phones the moment silence appears, terrified of being alone with our thoughts. We treat calm as a void that must be filled, when in truth, calm is the ground on which everything meaningful grows. The first step in reclaiming yourself is to pause, not as a reward after burnout, but as a regular ritual of awareness. You don't have to quit your job or move to a cabin in the woods. You just have to start creating spaces in your life that aren't driven by outcome. Walk without a podcast. Sit without a plan. Do something slowly, not to finish it, but to feel it. When you stop rushing, something subtle begins to happen. Your sense of time expands. You start noticing the details again, the way sunlight hits the floor, the texture of your breathing, the difference between stress and effort. Stillness gives you back what speed has stolen, the capacity to notice, to feel, to choose. Fromm called this the difference between having and being. Hustle culture is built on having achievements, having recognition, having control. But the deepest moments of peace often come from simply being, existing without agenda, without comparison, without needing to earn your place in the world. This doesn't mean giving up on ambition. It means redefining it. Real ambition isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters most, with intention, with integrity, with presence. It's not measured by how visible your success is, but by how aligned your life feels when no one's watching. Redefining success also means asking uncomfortable questions. Who decided what success should look like? Who benefits from your exhaustion? Who told you that slowing down equals failure? The truth is, the system doesn't want you to ask these questions, because every moment you stop to think, you become harder to manipulate. You begin to see that the finish line was never yours to begin with. Philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius urged us to measure life not by its length or its noise, but by its depth. Life is long, Seneca wrote, if you know how to use it. But using it well doesn't mean filling every hour with productivity. It means filling it with presence. The Stoics believed that a calm mind is not an idle one. It's a disciplined one, aware of what truly matters and unshaken by the chaos around it. To live with that kind of clarity today is an act of resistance. It means letting go of the myth that your value lies in your output. It means understanding that rest is not laziness, it's wisdom. It's the understanding that your worth was never meant to be conditional. True fulfillment often begins when the noise stops, when you stop chasing applause and start listening for what feels authentic, when you stop comparing your timeline to others and start honoring your own rhythm. You'll realize that meaning doesn't come from doing everything, it comes from doing the right things for the right reasons. And maybe that's the real revolution, not working less, but working with consciousness, not escaping ambition, but transforming it into something rooted in depth rather than desperation. Imagine a culture where success wasn't defined by exhaustion, but by balance, where doing well didn't mean doing more, but living with more awareness, more empathy, more peace. Because the truth is, the world doesn't need more overworked, overachieving people trying to prove their worth. It needs grounded, awake people who know how to use their energy wisely, who understand that stillness is not the opposite of progress, but its foundation. So maybe the bravest thing you can do in a world that runs on speed is to slow down, to listen, to remember that you were never meant to be a machine. You were meant to be a mind, a body, a heart, alive to the present moment. And when you finally stop running long enough to breathe, you may discover something radical, that the life you've been chasing has been here all along, waiting for you to notice it.